What's going on, everybody? My name is John Poznansky.
And I am Harry, and welcome to episode 9 of Destination Talk with Poz and Harry. We are coming to you again from Chop Studios, located at 750 Route 34 in Matawan, New Jersey. Today, we are joined by Rutgers University 174-pound wrestler Jackson Turley. Jackson hails from Chester, Virginia, where he went to St. Christopher's High School and was a 4-time Virginia State champion. He was a 2021 All-American. He's a 3-time NCAA qualifier, 2-time Big Ten championship place winner in 2023 and 2024. And at the time of this recording, Jackson has over 60 career collegiate victories. Jackson, welcome to Destination Talk. Thank you for coming in. How's everything going?
Everything's good. Thank you for having me.
No, you're very welcome. So we'll jump right in. Why wrestling? What was it that got you into wrestling? And were you playing any other sports along the way that made you say I like wrestling more?
So I grew up playing sports off the rip. My dad was a football wrestling coach before I was even born. So I was kind of just placed into this, just by the time I opened my eyes, I was wrestling. I was playing football. I was playing soccer. I dabbled with baseball. I dabbled with lacrosse. Once I got to high school, I played just football, lacrosse, and wrestling. And then my senior year was the first year that I only wrestled. Summer times growing up, I was always on a swim team. So sports for me.
Yeah,
100%.
all go.
Yeah, all go. I got into wrestling first. I think I started when I was 3-4 years old. I just remember going to practice with my dad, and one day I had my own wrestling shoes on. And from there, we just started wrestling. I don't know necessarily when I knew wrestling was the sport for me, but I do know that it was very young. I always knew that I was going to wrestle in college, and I knew that from a very young age. Regardless of whether or not I played my other sports, and I knew I was still wanted to be good in those sports. Right. I started on my high school football team on defensive line, and obviously I'm not a defensive lineman. I'm a 174-pounder, but we had some linebackers on our team that were a lot bigger and better than me at that position. So, in that case, I was just a team guy and went down to the line. But I mean, I love sports in general. I'm huge of just like staying in shape, being athletic.
Right.
Just being athletic is a huge part of like wrestling for me in the first place. So.
And you look like you are always having fun. I know you actually brought that up not too recently as a post-match interview. Just having fun out there.
Yeah, always at the end of the day, this is a sport. Regardless of whether or not we go in there and we're battling, we're fighting, and it's a war. But it's a game with set rules.
Right.
So that's all it is. At the end of the day, you're just out there having fun.
Mm-hmm. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah. So, what do you appreciate most about wrestling?
I mean, I just love wrestling itself. I see wrestling as like an art more or less than it is like a sport. You're creating something with your body basically, and I appreciate the artistic aspect about wrestling and how you could do things with so much power, strength, and ferocity, but at the end of the day, it could look beautiful.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I love about wrestling. I just love how it makes you a better person. Wrestling is one of those things in life that just teaches you about life in general. So, just everything about it, honestly.
And once you wrestled, everything becomes easier. That famous quote,
Quote.
Yeah.
It's hard not to just repeat it over and over again. But yeah, once you wrestle, everything else in life is easy.
Is that why you like tattoos, and all that? Because it's kind of similar to wrestling, very.
Yeah, I've always been like a more creative mind when it comes to not just wrestling, but just like anything. I always loved to draw.
Mm-hmm.
I took art class really seriously when it came to it. Like when it came to resource time in elementary school, middle school, I loved art class. It was one of my favorite things to do, and it was just because it gave me a time to like be alone with myself and just do something that nobody else was doing at the time. It's just me. And it's me versus me. That's a big thing about wrestling too. It's, your biggest competitor and your biggest enemy is not the person across from you. It's always you.
Yeah, I could attest to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I never wrestled, but I mean, as a baseball player, it's, I was a pitcher, and I also played the field, so it's, it's either the batter or it's the pitcher. It's one or the other. It's, it's you versus him, and that's what it ultimately comes down to. at the end of the day.
Pitching is one of those things that is very, it's a very mental game.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
just like wrestling, it's a very mental game. Pitching is one of those things in baseball that I really appreciate out of the sport. You know, I couldn't pitch. I got terrible shoulders. You know, they've popped in and out ever since I was about 10, 12 years old.
Right.
But it was one of those things in baseball where you actually got nervous for.
Yes.
Right? I never got nervous to bat. I got excited to bat. It was
Yes.
fun. But when it came time to pitch, you know, I was like, oh, I got butterflies. And it's the same type of feeling that I get when I wrestle.
Because all eyes are on you. You know,
Right.
it's you on the mound with the catcher, the batter, the umpire. And similarly to what you say, you know, when you step out onto the mat, it's you, your opponent, and the officials.
Right.
And, you know, the lights go dim and their spotlight's on you, and it's just you versus him in, you know, 7 minutes or less.
Right.
You know, that's
Right.
basically what it comes down to. You mentioned you've played other sports, many other sports, but in your opinion, what makes the sport of wrestling unique?
Like we were just talking about, the one-on-one aspect and just like how hard it is, like on both opponents mentally. When there's a couple sports that are one-on-one and it's just you versus you, like just for an example, like gymnastics, swimming, pitching and batting, right? Those one-on-one sports, I really think are like unique sports because. Like I said, I played defensive line in high school. It's easy to have a bad play and just disappear in the background. You're one of 11, you know. So when you're out there on that mat, just you and your opponent, that's a very unique feeling and a unique thing just in general. You can't really replicate that anywhere else.
No, you can't. And I know when I had the opportunity to come watch you guys wrestle a couple of years ago, it was the first time I was at a match. You know, that athlete in me came out. And, you know, I started to feel, you know, the hair standing up on the back of my neck again personally, because, like, that was the environment, you know, albeit a different sport, but that was that environment of, like, it's me versus my opponent. And I saw that. And I've actually come to really enjoy watching the sport of wrestling over the last, you know, five years now, I guess.
Yeah, Harry only got into wrestling a couple years ago when him and I met, but now he loves
I blame
the
you
sport.
for it, but I've taught myself. You know, I'm watching the matches, and now I fully understand what I'm looking at compared to the first year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say fun fact, but I necessarily don't like to watch wrestling. Like, if you ask me as like a spectator, when I watch wrestling, I break it down. And so, like, at the end of the day, when I'm watching wrestling, I'm just watching film.
I'm the same way.
Yeah,
same
so
exact way.
I don't have that type of like spectator aspect. But very recently, I've started to pick that up. My little brother started wrestling in high school. He's a junior in high school, and when I watch him wrestle, I get that same feeling as when I wrestle. Where I get the hair standing up on my arms. I'm ready to go. My palms are sweaty. Right, and I'm really excited for him to go.
And I think it's also too. Like when I watch a baseball game, granted it's been many years since I've last played, but I look at the game a little differently because I played it. I would imagine for both of you, if you watch a wrestling match, you're looking more from an analytical perspective. You're looking at technique and what is this guy doing, and you're seeing it very differently than I am because I'm still learning the sport. But you guys being in it, you're able to see things before they happen,
right?
And that's probably what what you're taking from it.
So you've been in college for what, 6 years now? 7?
This is year 6.
Year 6. So, in your how do you think college wrestling has evolved over the years since you've been?
It evolves so much every single year. I mean, the easiest example to use is the rules changes that have gone over the last 6 years. When I got to college, the rules were completely different. So like that's one thing. You got to keep up with the rule changes. I always thought that a huge rule change that was going to happen while I was in college was going to be a headgear rule, right? We're required to wear headgear in college. Like, you look at my ears, you look at your ears. It's going to happen regardless. Yeah. Right? I got my first thing of cauliflower ear with headgear on. So it doesn't make sense to me that we have to still wear headgear as grown men making an option to wrestle in the sport.
Yeah. They'll never get rid of it, I feel like, though.
Yeah, we wrestle in the springtime, and we have no headgear on. We're all wrestling freestyle. We wrestle at practice. Most of us have no headgear on, right? The only time I put on headgear is, like, the day before to make sure it still fits.
Yeah. Or Yara 2 minutes before the match starts.
Yeah, some people like Yara or like Sebastian, they just don't. They just pick up a random headgear and hope it works.
Mm-hmm.
That's
But,
funny.
I mean, something that has evolved when I got to college, it was a lot about like who was better at technique, who was better at wrestling, who was going to. It was a lot more of like a chess match.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I don't something with the young bucks watching Jordan Burroughs guys growing up. These kids have pace now, man,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a huge part of high school wrestling. It's like even college wrestling, but like kids coming up now like have this crazy pace and they have this crazy motor that like I would say that like kids I don't want to say my generation, I don't want to sound that old, but kids from like the generation above were a little bit less had less pace.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only guys that really had that were like the Iowa guys or like the that go-to style.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, that style didn't necessarily have the technique that these kids have nowadays.
Yeah, they have the
Right.
pace and the technique.
They have the pace and the technique. I would say I was growing up like club wrestling was getting like really huge, and not everybody was like going to clubs from like day one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was fortunate enough to have really good coaches growing up, so I was really proficient in technique growing up, and that really helped me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I see a lot of these kids now is they have like 3-4 moves that they're really good at, and they just run kids over with them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a huge thing that I see coming up. You know, I wrestle now like nowadays with the grad years, the COVID years, the redshirt years. I wrestle kids that are 18 years old, and I wrestle kids that are 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I could feel the difference. Just, I mean, obviously with age, but with what they're doing and what they're trying to do on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I wrestle an 18-year-old, and I know that he's going to have pace. And I know that he's going to be springy. He's going to be spriteful. Right. He's going to have a lot of pep in his step. Whereas I know when I wrestle a 24, 25-year-old kid, he's not going to have that spring. And it's not all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but these kids nowadays have a lot more like motor
Mm-hmm.
and gas in the tank.
A little more pop.
Yeah, a lot more pop.
Yeah.
Well, and that's really how you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
our mutual friend was for that very reason said, you know, I've got this guy who's very good, but he's lacking footwork
Right.
or speed. And that's how we ultimately got together. And 5 years later, we're still at it. And that's, you know, and that was what is the big reason why we do the work we do.
Yeah, evolution of the sport.
From an athletic standpoint, I've seen a huge improvement
Right.
in his footwork and speed
Well,
in
thank
the
you.
last 5 years.
I do appreciate that. I
100%.
I appreciate
I
that.
think I was one of the people in his ear at the time that was like, "Hey, you need to hit a ladder drill or something."
And I
Yeah.
have heard you brought the ladder into the room.
Yeah, since my freshman year, Turley's been with me the whole time. I mean, he could tell you the difference. I mean, I could tell you the difference in him. He could tell the difference in me. So
I mean, listen, I've been watching both of you guys wrestle for 5 years, even though you haven't both been on the mat for 5 years, and just watching both of you grow and just, you know, I like your style of wrestling. It's different. It's unique. It's at times very unpredictable, but I think that's what makes you who you are on the mat. You're never out of a match.
Never.
You're never out of a match, whether you're up 10 or down 10. You're never out of a match when I'm watching you.
The mentality stays the same. If
Yeah.
you're up 11 or down 14, you know, at the end of the day, I could always throw you on your head.
And I've seen you do that quite a few times. You mentioned earlier, you mentioned earlier that you always knew you were going to be a collegiate wrestler.
Right.
So when you were getting to that point in high school, can you speak a little bit about, maybe educate some of our listeners what that recruiting process was like for you, and ultimately how did you end up at Rutgers?
Okay, so the recruiting process for me, I guess, started a little bit later. I wasn't necessarily worried about where I was going to go. I just kind of knew it was going to happen.
Right.
And I think I probably hit it a little bit later than most people do. I started taking my visits my fall of my senior year. And that was part of the reason why I couldn't do football, is because I needed to take college visits at some point. Where were we at with that? Trying to think. So my high school coach went to Blair. He was a Blair kid, and he trained under Jeff Buxton there. And then he ended up going to UVA and then getting a coaching job at my high school. I guess through the Blair connection, he and Coach Leo. Coach Leo, that's a callback.
yeah, Leonardis.
Yeah, Coach Leonardis. I guess they had a mutual connection from being at Blair,
Right.
and I think my coach is the one who reached out to Leonardis first and was like, "Hey, check out this kid." And from there on, I developed a relationship with Coach Leo, and Out of all the schools that wanted me and offered me money and had decent academics, Rutgers just came out on top. I wouldn't say anything else like stuck out about any other schools besides Rutgers. Like when I came to a Rutgers wrestling match, that pretty much sold it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
there's an atmosphere inside that building.
I was already committed by that point. But
Right.
once I saw a Rutgers wrestling match, I was like, I'm signing, because there's not many other places like that.
No.
You know, you have a fan base that loves wrestling. You got 4,000, 5,000 people there cheering you on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I grew up going to UVA matches. There's not a lot of people that love wrestling in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's not a lot of people at those matches. You know, I grew up an ACC fan. You
Right.
know, you go to the ACCs, there's like 100 people, and
It's a lot different.
yeah, it's a lot different. You know, you go to Big Tens, it's a show, it's an event.
Yeah.
You know, I've never really seen wrestling like that until I came to New Jersey, and I love the culture that's up here, just when it comes to wrestling. So that was a big kicker.
Yeah, and I would definitely say you guys are competing in probably the best conference in all of the United States, and you know, every single time you step out onto the mat in a Big Ten duel, it's a must see.
Yeah,
It's an absolute must see.
when I wrestle, I want it to mean something,
Right.
right? And I saw the schedule that we have at Rutgers, and that schedule means something. You know, from November until March, it's hammers all the way through, and that was kind of the reason why I went to the high school I went to, is like while I was developing. You know, I wanted to get a hard schedule, and my high school had a really hard schedule. We went to Beast of the East, Escape the Rock, Iron Man. We had the National Prep Circuit. So I was hitting hard tournaments, wrestling really good kids all year round, and that's the type of things that help you develop, and you know, hitting those hard tournaments. And if you are one of those kids that like don't have the opportunity with your public school schedule or with your high school schedule, you got to hit those off-season tournaments, you know. And I hit all of those too. I went to Super 32, even during football season.
Right.
Right. There was one time I hit a football game, and then finished my football game. I drove down to North Carolina, dirt still on face, taped up and everything. Hopped on the scale, weighed in. That's just one of those things about being a multi-sport athlete. It's like just loving the sports that you do. But, and then, you know, the college recruiting process. My little brother's going through that right now.
Right.
You know, he's a junior in high school. He's trying to get ranked. You know, he's got a big tournament coming up this weekend, and I'm really excited for him for that. But it's not about like people have this. I don't know. When you get recruited in wrestling, it's not the same as being recruited in basketball and in football.
Right.
Right. You're not going to have a coach to be like, "I like you. Here's an offer."
Right.
That's not necessarily how it goes. And there's a common misconception about that when it comes to like different sports. Like obviously the football, basketball, baseball is everyone receives those offers. You see them on Twitter for like, I've received an offer from this school, and like kids post that so like other schools can offer them. Like that's not the same when it comes to wrestling. Like you got to actually develop a relationship with these coaches.
Right.
Right. And when I was going through that process, like I didn't necessarily know that I should reach out.
Right.
Right. I think that I'm all this and all that, and I'm ranked number 2, number 3 in the country, and I'm like these coaches are going to see me on these rankings and they're going to call me. That's not going to happen.
Right.
Right. You got to get out there. You got to go to the RTC practices. You got to reach out to these coaches yourselves. You know, and start developing that relationship, and that's going to help you get recruited in the long run.
They want to know more than just the wrestler of who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing when it comes to wrestling, when it comes to sports. They do want to know who you are.
Right.
Right. If you're one of those people that brings other people down, you know, if you're one of those people that likes to go out, party, and do all that stuff, there's coaches in this country that are fine with that as long as you do your work.
Right.
Right. But if you're one of those people that do that and bring other people down with you, no one's going to want you.
Right. That makes sense. And I think that's across the board on a lot of different things too. That definitely goes across the board.
So, what challenges have you faced, both physically, mentally? I mean, wrestling for 6-7 years in college brings a lot of injuries. Anything that stand out to you? Any challenges you faced over that time?
So I mean, the mental aspect, it's a war up top. It's a war up here every single week. right? We all want to be tough and say that we go out there every single day and every single match, the same mentality and the same thing. It's a fight sometimes to get yourself in the right mindset to be able to go out there another time, to be able to weigh in twice in a weekend and keep the same mindset for both matches. That's difficult, you know? And I'm not going to sit here and lie to anybody. I'm not even going to lie to myself. You know, I'm anxious to wrestle. You know, I'm nervous. But, like, I know that my mind and my body kind of doesn't know the difference between that and excitement. So I take that and I use that, and that's just one mental thing. Physical, dude.
Oh, I know. So I was waiting for you to say it.
Physical, that's a different story. Now, you have some physical things that will actually set you back. My sophomore year, I completely destroyed my back. I herniated a couple discs in my lower back. My sciatic nerves are completely shot. I wake up now in the mornings and I got to take a hot shower to get my joints loose.
I know that feeling.
Right? You know, if I sleep wrong, I can't feel my feet. You know, I'm shuffling across the floor for a couple minutes until I can pick them up. You know, I can't. Good thing I don't go to class anymore because I can't raise my arm. You know, everything's online for me at this point.
Yeah. Same with me.
My shoulders are blowing out. My knees are going. You know, my hips are. I'm the trajectory to put me in a wheelchair is definitely going up a couple years because of wrestling.
Oh, jeez.
You know,
Hey, at least he's honest.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
You know, I got nerve damage, dude. Like it hurts.
Yeah, your hands, both hands taped up. Me and him were going the other day, and both of his hands were taped up. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He goes, I can't feel them.
I can't feel my hands. You know, I need some help. I need some help with the grip. So sometime back in November, I was wrestling with you.
Oh, jeez.
I hit a fake, and you didn't move your leg, and I like slapped the back of your knee, and I think I broke something in my hand.
Listen, I've been hit by him a couple of times. I know what it feels like.
Try to pick that leg up.
Oh, dude, he hit me with a forearm one day, and it was like getting hit with a baseball bat. He's no.
But going off of the mental aspect you're talking about, like just this weekend, you came up to me after the Indiana match. I'll sit on the bench, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, wake up. Like you're like, that's not how you wrestle. And then, you know, we fast forward 2 days later, Ohio State, like kind of wrestle like differently. So that kind of just came in my brain.
Oh, dude,
attest to that.
I'm not gonna lie, you pissed me off. I'm not. Man, when I watch you go out there, and I know how you wrestle. Right? I know what you feel like. And I see you go out there and kind of. Am I allowed to curse?
Go ahead.
Depends on what you say, but go for it.
Okay, you were wrestling like a bitch. I'm not gonna lie. And I'm over here in the corner trying to make some sort of eye contact with you, like, hey, wake up, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you know you're so much better than this guy. I know you got a match on Sunday. And you're a little banged up. Take him down.
Yeah,
do it now.
Yeah.
Right?
I
Don't
heard
do
you.
it later.
Yeah.
Refreshing to hear you say that.
And
very,
then,
very refreshing.
And then Sunday comes along, and you woke up, bro. That was amazing. I don't think I've ever seen our bench that hype.
Yeah, that was the first time ever.
That was a top, because of that. That's a top 5 experience for me at Rutgers. You know, I loved that. That was awesome. I'm getting goosebumps right now.
And it's funny. It's funny you say that because we got together on Tuesday. Well, by the time this airs, it'll have been a few weeks past that point. But we got together on Tuesday, and I said that to you. I did say that's going to be a moment that you're going to remember for a very long time. But the coach in me was, okay, enjoy this. Your enjoyment of this is over. You have a match coming up this Sunday against someone who you know very well, and you have to forget about it because you got to go out there and beat him. And that's as simple as it gets.
Yeah, it's knowing where your feet are, and you wrestle Friday, you wrestle Sunday, 2 weigh-ins. It's short term memory. Either if you win or lose,
Yeah,
and
100%.
And in wrestling, there's highs and lows, right? And it's especially in the Big Ten wrestling, there's really big highs and really big lows,
Right.
right? And you got to wrestle Friday, Sunday. Whatever happens on Friday, you got to leave that there. Whether you got your butt whooped, whether you didn't wrestle good, whether you destroyed the kid, whether you did something amazing, you have to leave all of that on Friday, and then
Correct.
you gotta completely reset and go back in Saturday, Sunday. And that's and again, I don't want you to be mad at me for that.
Oh, I'm not mad at all.
If I'm wrestling like that too, please tell me that. Too,
Oh, yeah.
I want people around me to let me know things like that. I don't want people to people to be fake or to limit me because they think they're gonna hurt my feelings, right? At the end of the day, like, I know that you love me. I know I love you. I could tell you something like that and be like, hey, get your head in the game.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, to be fair, we've had those conversations as well, you know, because you have to be able to make that separation, you know, and for us, it's a little different because we're coach and athlete. We're also friends, you know, we're in some capacities, we're like family, but you have to be able to make that separation when you see something to say, hey, I know there's more in you.
Right. And it takes a level of maturity from both partners to be able
100%.
to be able to do something like that.
No.
And a level of trust to be able to do something like
Yeah,
that
and
and
I
have that relationship.
Yeah, and I can say with certainty, I feel confident we've definitely got that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
100%.
Even me and Turley, though, even in practice, like we'll practice, and like one day, you know, just we always say like, oh, well, there should just be a camera on us because like the way we flow and stuff like
Right.
that. But one day, like say like I'm not moving a certain way, or I see he's not moving a certain way, like, you good? Everything all right? And you know, it's just that everyday grind goes back to what the sport of wrestling is all about.
Well, and you bring up the grind, so it leads into the next question. Collegiate athletes have challenges in and of itself, but the Division I athlete sometimes more than others. How have you balanced being a Division I athlete over the years?
Terribly. Terribly.
Love the honesty.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm not gonna lie to you or myself. In the last couple of years, I've definitely done it better. You know, with wrestling, there's sacrifices that you got to make that there's, you know, you don't want to, but you know, you got to sacrifice your social life. You got to sacrifice relationships. You got to sacrifice your time. In my early years in college, I didn't do that, dude. You know, I would just do me, and it worked too, and that's the bad thing.
Right.
That was bad. It was bad that it worked because in my head I was like, oh, I could just do me and it works, and that's not, you know, that's not the way that things are supposed to work out. You know, in a couple aspects I may have gotten a little lucky here and there, right? And I didn't realize that as a young adult or as an old teenager,
Right.
And you know, over the last 6 years, it took a lot of maturing and growth to be able to manage my time right, to be able to, you know, manage my body correctly. Some of my injuries might have even came from me not managing my body right.
Right.
You know, and that's something that I wish that I learned a little bit earlier. But no, in the last couple of years, I've definitely done a lot better job of managing my schoolwork, managing my relationships with my family, managing my relationship with my girlfriend, managing my time on the mat, managing my body, right? And these are things that as a young wrestler, I didn't necessarily know that were going to be that difficult. Everyone told me. I was warned, right? I'm not going to say no one said that this was going to happen.
Right.
But you got to be able to manage everything right. And it takes a level of maturity and growth and a lot of sacrifices to do that. You know, as a young person, you got to, and as somebody coming into college, there's things that you're going to have to give up to be able to be great. You know, and
Yeah. How would you compare your off-season training and your in-season training?
I mean, I don't know how many. I mean, you would know this with me. I mean,
I mean, with
kind of just go.
it's the same. If I had to answer that question, I would say the in-season and out-of-season is pretty much the same because we wrestle all year round because it's not like it's a season sport.
Right.
But at a season, like you're not doing the doubles every day and like the hard, you know, worrying about your weight and everything. Yeah, we kind of get a little bigger, but it's pretty much the same. I mean,
I would say
that's how I would explain it.
I would say after hearing that real quick, I would say in season we're focused a lot more on like shape, you know, staying in shape, being conditioned, wrestling hard, wrestling while you're tired, like things like that. I would say we do a lot more in season, but out of season, I would say we focus a lot more on like technique,
Right.
a lot more on position. If you got things that you need to learn or grow on, that's the time to do it, and that's the thing that's the time to experiment and practice, and for you to try new things, and for you to figure things out, and like it's hard to do that sometimes in season when you wrestle, you know, Sunday, Friday, Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. You only got maybe a day or two to fix the mistakes that you made.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in the off season, you got that 7-month period where you're not wrestling a folk style match. You got a lot of time to be able to grow, develop muscle memory, and change your position a little bit.
I agree.
And I think I would add too, like the off-season work is the time that you and I spend.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
doing that. Like that would be one difference, at least from your perspective. because
Correct.
It's challenging in the season, but we're doing more speed and agility work in the off-season,
You're lifting more,
plyometrics
yeah.
and stuff like that. That's definitely one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Who's been one of the biggest influences or is a mentor for you in the sport?
I would say over the last couple of years, I mean, like I said, with developing relationships with your coaches, Coach Goodale and I have developed a really great relationship since I've been in college, and he's been a huge mentor for me. Just navigating the sport itself. And then if you flash back to high school, I would say it was my high school coach, and it was a huge mentor for me for just like learning wrestling in a couple of new places, learning how to cut weight right, learning how to just do this and that. And then I would say before that would just be 100% my dad, and I wouldn't say there's a specific person that I ever looked up to growing up wrestling. I mean, I always watched my older brother wrestling, and he had the nastiest headlock on the East Coast, man. And that was probably where a lot of my high-flying stuff came from. My club coach at home, Mark Strickland, he's in the Granby system, right? And so I went to Granby camp every year. That's where I got all my roles and stuff from.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't know who said it, I don't know the exact quote. It was a dude who won a gold medal. And he was like, hey, if you could attribute this to somebody, who would it be? And he was like, if I had to, break this medal apart and give each piece to somebody who helped me out, I would have to smith this down to dust.
Right.
And I don't think that there's anybody I would have to give 100% credit to for my wrestling career. And there's a lot of people that deserve some credit for my wrestling career, and that's just one of the things that I take away from like life and sports in general. You should never really just focus on one person or one thing or one concept or one ideology. It's good to like learn from a lot of different people,
Yeah.
I learn a lot from my teammates, I there's a lot of teammates that I look up to, like especially in my time in college. There's people that I lived with that I was like, I'm starting to follow his routine, his lifestyle, right? There's and it's not an age thing, it's not a maturity thing, right? It's just whether or not you like it. I learned from kids that come into the RTC and like they show me something, they're 12, 13 years old. I'm like, wow, that's cool. I think I'm gonna try that. And I go into practice the next day, and that's what I'm working on. So
I think I've seen a few of those matches with those moves.
And it's like,
Call him Action Jackson for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not Action Jackson for no reason. That's what's going on.
So, what does life after wrestling look like for you?
I have no idea.
I would have said the same thing.
It's hard. I should probably know this by now. I'm fortunate enough that I do have a summer internship. I'm leaving college after I get my degree. So right out of college, I have an internship waiting for me. What happens after that, I don't know. We'll see if I like it. If I like it, I'll probably stay in it. It's time for something new. I've been doing this same routine for a very long time, and I'm excited for what comes next. I don't necessarily know what that is, but whether it's coaching at the club or college level, whether it's falling into business, or just corporate lifestyle. I don't know what it is, but I'm excited for whatever's next.
Awesome. So coming to an end here, what advice would you give younger wrestlers who aspire to compete at the collegiate level? What advice would you give them?
Big piece of advice that I always give to young wrestlers is play other sports, right? Wrestling is not everything, and it's definitely not the only sport. If you just wrestle, you're just going to develop wrestling skills, and you got to be an athlete. There's a lot of things that you learn in other sports to be an athlete. I say to like parents that have young kids and they're like, hey, what other sports should I put my kids in? First one is soccer, right? For kids that are 4 to 8 years old, like that you got to play some soccer, get some balance, learn how to juggle a soccer ball. get some agility going. And then I would say for like kids that are like going to the high school level, you gotta learn how to work hard,
Right.
and you gotta learn to love it. If you don't love this, you can't do it. It's hard when you do love it, right? So like if you don't love this sport, you're not gonna be able to do it. And whether you gotta force yourself to fall in love with it, whether you gotta change some things in your life or your lifestyle, you gotta fall in love with it. That's probably the biggest thing when it comes to wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a tough, demanding sport, and just sports in general. You have to love what you're doing,
Right.
regardless of what that is. But if there's one thing I've learned, especially in talking to John, this is a very demanding sport. I know I remember the day you and I were talking. I says, I might have been all right at this wrestling thing, and you said to me, you don't even know where it begins.
There's more than just the 7 minutes on the mat.
It's more than just the time on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jackson, we do want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come in and join us here. This was a great conversation. When John told me that you were interested in coming on, I was like, I want to meet you because, like I said, I've been watching you on television for the last few years. I wanted the opportunity to meet you in person. I'm glad that happened today. It was a great interview. And the best of luck the rest of the season with the Big Tens and with the NCAAs, which are going to be very local this year in Philadelphia.
Yep.
So, we'll definitely be watching and cheering you guys on. To our listeners out there, that's a wrap on episode 9 of Destination Talk with Paz and Harry. We'll see you guys again real soon.